So, you are inspired by memories of materials. Can you tell me more about this?
Yes. The recent line of work that I'm doing, the clusters and clutches, are all originally related to my mother's home decor. And I think it's just because that's what I grew up around. So that's what I know. And that's just one of those core memories I have. And I think I'm also very particularly attracted to materials, that the surface texture, that the heat it gives off, the smell of it, of that material, and the feel of it, it's all really important to me and it's locked in my memory. And so I have all this collection of memories of this industrial kitschy material or whatever it was, like the plastic decorative fruits my mom had in her home for Thanksgiving. She would put out this cornucopia basket and she'd stuff it with plastic fruits to, I guess, show abundance during Thanksgiving time. And in that basket, I was attracted to these little grapes, these little plastic grapes, and I'd pop them off and chew them, and they suctioned my cheeks and my mouth or on my tongue. And so it's even a bigger memory now to me. And so I was working on a big show with a friend of mine, and I started thinking through that memory and just that object, and I started throwing these orbs. And then they became clusters, and I started building them together, and then I started, it started growing from there and becoming a little bit bigger and expanding. But in the end, I think it all goes back to this idea of having these domestic scale items that are in your home that make you feel better or remind you of nature or are more than that original object. So it's more than a cluster of grapes. It's now this vibrant, colorful, juicy, beautiful that you've got a collection of. So the idea too of having something in a hutch that you treasure and you collect because the material is so beautiful and you just want to contain and keep it and hold it. And I'm curious about that too. Like why do we have to collect something when we see something beautiful in nature? Like for instance, if I go on a walk on the beach and I see a gorgeous seashell, I have to take it home. I have to put that in my pocket and get it back home and then put it where? I don't know. Then I've got all these collections at home of all these shiny objects. So I'm really curious about that. This need as a human to keep and hold on to things that are beautiful.
Yeah, that is interesting. We're all cave people with our fire. Just it's a little bit more advanced now. So, can you walk me through how you create your cluster sculptures?
Yes. The new ones that move, like I mentioned before, I guess I'm calling them sculptures in the round, where there's no bottom or top to these pieces. So they can be held, they can be shifted and moved, and when you position them, when you set them down, they can look different the way that you set them down. So they can be taller, shorter, whatever. And I really love that. So those new pieces, I'll walk you through that process. I first throw all of the hollow forms, and right now they're very orb shaped. They originally, some of these forms started to come from the idea of all the little drupelets on a mulberry or on a blackberry. And so I started to think about that shape and how could all those items pack in together if you put them in a cluster in one piece. But then I'll take an inspiration from something else. Like my most recent red sculpture is inspired by the barberry. It's this beautiful little oval shaped berry that grows on these decorative plants. We take them as decorative plants, but they're actually medicinal in other cultures. So this barberry shape or this druplet shape is thrown on the potter's wheel hollow. If they're really tiny, I'll use a little throwing stick. And if they're larger, I can throw it like a regular pot and I just close it at the top. So it's a perfect hollow form. I let those set up and then I put them back on the wheel upside down in a clay chuck. And so that holds it and I can trim the top. So the top is perfectly rounded just like the bottom. And then I use Canthal wire, this high temperature wire, and I bend my own wire. I make little U shapes, and then I'll put that into one side of that little berry. And then those pieces get bisqued, and I'll make hundreds at a time. After they're bisqued, then I have to have another little piece of hardware to hold that berry from the wire, and I'll dip it into a glaze. And it's tricky because it's hollow. So now when I go dip it into a glaze, it wants to float up. So that's kind of a problem I'm dealing with right now too. So I'll dip each one in a glaze, and then I have this special shelf that I bought that is 3/4 inch thick. I think it's corduroy. It's beautiful and has holes in it. And so now I will add a little wire that hooks onto the berry that's also canthal, and then I'll put it through the hole in the shelf. And then on top of that shelf, I've got a post that's a rod, a canthal rod. And so now that berry is hanging suspended under the shelf like a little chrysalis. So I'll put like 25 or 30 of those hanging below a shelf. Then I'll load the shelf and everything's hanging below, and I can stack more pots on top of the shelf if I want, which is amazing. Fire that round, and then I get these glazed pieces out that are just like these little berry gems. They're beautiful. And then I already built something else, this thing called that I'm calling a seed, and it's made out of terracotta and it's hand built. And I put little U canthal rings all over that, fire that. And so I have a seed that has all these canthal loops on it. And then I have the berry that has a canthal loop on it. And then I sew or I string each of those together. So all of the glazed berries are attached to the center seed that you don't see when the sculpture is completed. That's it.
That was a very interesting explanation of that. I actually enjoyed that. So, where can
Okay.
people get this Canthal wire that you've been talking about?
Okay. Who sells it? Kemper Tools, Wire, Amazon sells Canthal. You can get it in all different gauges. It's pretty affordable right now on Amazon because I guess it's the 26 to 22 gauge wire is used in vape pens. So you can buy reels of it on Amazon. But yeah, I use all different gauges because I'm using thinner gauge for each little piece that's strung up in the kiln, and then 17 gauge for the berries and the seed.
I absolutely love this.